My name is Lily Schmidt, 32 years old, and for most of my adult life, I believed I had built something solid, something real, something that couldn't just fall apart overnight. I was wrong. Before everything unraveled, our life looked like the kind people quietly envied. Not flashy, not perfect, but steady, predictable in the best way. We had history, 6 years of marriage, 9 years together. We met in college, one of those accidental, almost cliché moments at a volunteer event. We were building houses for families who needed them, covered in dust and sweat, laughing over crooked nails and uneven boards. He made a joke about my terrible hammer skills. I rolled my eyes, and somehow, that turned into coffee. Then late-night conversations. Then something deeper. Back then, our connection felt effortless. We could talk for hours about nothing, or everything. Sometimes we didn't even need words at all. There was just this quiet understanding between us, a rhythm we both knew how to follow. 3 years later, we got married. Small ceremony, close friends, family. Nothing extravagant, but it felt right. A year after that, we bought a house. And slowly, piece by piece, we built a life inside it. Morning coffee together before work. Lazy Sundays where we'd stay in pajamas until noon. Friday nights dedicated to movies we barely paid attention to because we'd end up talking instead. We even had that ongoing conversation about kids. Someday, we'd say. Always pushing it just a little further into the future because we were happy where we were. Or at least, I thought we were. He wasn't perfect. Neither was I. He worked too much sometimes. I forgot important dates. He left his clothes everywhere. I got irritated over things that didn't really matter. But underneath all of that, there was loyalty. There was effort. There was love. And physically, we were good. Not like those early, reckless days where everything felt urgent and new, but steady, comfortable, real. The kind of intimacy that comes from knowing someone completely. At least, that's what I believed. Until that Tuesday night. I remember it too clearly. I was curled up on the couch, legs tucked under me, half watching some terrible sitcom while scrolling through my phone. The house was quiet except for the TV and the faint hum of my laptop updating something in the background. Everything felt normal, safe. Then he walked in. At first, I didn't think much of it. But something about the way he stood there, just watching me for a second too long, made my stomach tighten. When I looked up, I saw it. That expression. The one people get when they've been rehearsing something in their head over and over again, and they've finally decided to say it out loud. Lily, we need to talk. 4 words. Simple, but heavy enough to shift the entire room. I muted the TV immediately, my body going still. Okay, I said slowly, sitting up. What's going on? For a second, he didn't answer. Just stood there, arms crossed, like he was bracing himself for impact. And then he said it. I think we should try a sexless marriage. For a moment, nothing made sense. The words reached my ears, but my brain refused to process them. So I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. Because it had to be a joke. Because there was no version of reality where my husband of 6 years would stand in front of me and say something like that with a straight face. Okay. What? I said, shaking my head, still half smiling. What is this? A joke? He didn't smile back. I'm serious. And just like that, everything shifted. The air felt colder, heavier, like the room itself was holding its breath. I stared at him, searching his face for anything familiar, for the man I knew. But something about his expression felt distant, detached, like he was already somewhere else. You're serious? I repeated quietly. Yes. I sat up straighter, my heart starting to pound in my chest. You want what exactly? I asked. No sex? At all? It's not about that, he said quickly. like he'd practiced this part. It's about growth, about understanding who we are outside of physical dependence, about building a deeper connection that isn't based on intimacy. A deeper connection, without intimacy. The words didn't fit together. They didn't make sense. And where is this coming from? I asked, my voice tightening despite my effort to stay calm. Are you unhappy? Did I do something? He exhaled slowly, almost impatiently. No, this isn't about you. I've been learning a lot lately. Reading, listening to podcasts. There are people talking about how relationships can trap you in roles that don't allow real personal growth. I blinked. You've been listening to podcasts? I said slowly. And now suddenly, our marriage is a problem? That's not what I said, he snapped, irritation flashing for the first time. You're twisting it. No, I said, shaking my head. I'm trying to understand it. Because right now, it sounds like you're telling me that the relationship we've spent 9 years building is somehow holding you back. It's not holding me back, he said. But maybe parts of it are. Maybe we rely too much on physical intimacy instead of emotional depth. Rely? I repeated. Then, before I could stop myself, a crutch? I added. He didn't deny it. That hurt more than anything. Because to me, it was never a crutch. It was connection. It was closeness. It was love in its most honest form. And now he was reducing it to something disposable. You can't just decide this on your own, I said, my voice sharper now. This isn't something you experiment with like a new hobby. This is our marriage. He finally sat down across from me, his posture calm, but his eyes still distant. Exactly, he said. And I think if we take sex off the table for a while, we can figure out who we really are as individuals. I let out a slow breath, trying to keep my emotions from boiling over. And what does that make us? I asked. Roommates? Business partners? Two people splitting bills and pretending that's enough? You're being dramatic. No, I said firmly. I'm being honest. Because from where I'm sitting, this doesn't feel like growth. It feels like rejection. The word hung between us. For a brief second, something flickered across his face. Guilt. Or maybe doubt. But it disappeared just as quickly. You're not even trying to understand, he said quietly. I laughed again, but this time it came out hollow. Because there's nothing to understand, I said. This is insane. Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. He looked at me like he was waiting for something, like I'd suddenly change my mind, like I'd have some kind of realization and thank him for opening my eyes. But all I felt was distance. Cold. Growing distance. And underneath that, fear. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't really about sex. It couldn't be. This was about something else. Something already broken. Something that had been building quietly, beneath the surface, while I was still living in the illusion that everything was fine. The next few days felt unreal. I kept waiting for him to come back to me, to sit down, laugh it off, admit it was a stupid idea he picked up from some random video online. But that moment never came. Instead, he changed. Subtly at first. Then all at once. He was always on his phone, always wearing earbuds, always absorbed in something I couldn't see. I'd walk past him and catch fragments of voices. Your value isn't tied to how you please others. Reclaim your identity. Break free from expectations. Whenever I asked what he was listening to, he'd just shrug. Just something I've been thinking about. That shrug. It didn't belong to him. He used to tell me everything. Now I was getting one-word answers, closed doors, silence. Then his appearance changed. The man who used to live in hoodies and worn-out jeans suddenly looked like he was preparing for board meetings every day. Structured jackets, crisp shirts, even on weekends. One morning, I caught him staring at himself in the mirror, adjusting his collar like he was trying to become someone else. You look different, I said carefully. Thanks, he replied, not even looking at me. No explanation. No conversation, just distance. And every single day, that distance grew wider. Until one night, lying beside him in bed while he quietly typed on his phone, smiling at something I couldn't see, a thought crept into my mind. Slow, unwelcome, terrifying. What if this wasn't just about self-discovery? What if there was someone else? And as much as I hated myself for thinking it, it was the first explanation that actually made sense. The thought didn't leave me. It sat there, heavy and persistent, quietly reshaping everything I saw. At first, I tried to ignore it, tried to convince myself I was overreacting, that this was just a phase, that people change sometimes, and maybe this was his version of that. But the more I paid attention, the less it felt like a phase, and the more it felt like I was living with someone I didn't know. It started with the silence. Not the comfortable kind we used to have, the kind where we could sit in the same room doing our own things and still feel connected. This was different. This was empty. Every conversation felt forced, one-sided, like I was talking to someone who had already checked out but hadn't bothered to tell me. "How was work?" I'd ask. "Fine. What did you do today?" "Nothing special." That was it. No details. No follow-up questions. No curiosity about my day. Just walls. And then there was his phone. Always in his hand. Always angled away from me. If I walked into the room unexpectedly, the screen would go dark instantly. Conversations would stop mid-sentence. Smiles would disappear like they'd never been there. Smiles. That was the part that got to me the most. Because he wasn't smiling at me anymore. But he was smiling at something. Or someone. One night, I pretended to be asleep. I lay perfectly still, my breathing slow and steady, waiting. It didn't take long. The second he thought I was out, his hand reached for his phone. The glow lit up his face in the darkness. And then, there it was. That smile. Soft, real, unfiltered. The kind I hadn't seen directed at me in weeks. My chest tightened. "Who are you talking to?" The question burned in my throat, but I stayed silent. Watched. Waited. Every few seconds, his fingers moved quickly across the screen. Typing. Pausing. Reading. Smiling again. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next evening, I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Who are you always texting?" I asked, trying to sound casual, even though my voice betrayed me. He looked up, startled for a split second, just long enough for me to catch it. Then his expression smoothed out. "Just some people from a group I joined," he said. "What kind of group?" He hesitated. Then, "A self-development collective." A collective. The word felt strange in his mouth. "Since when are you in a collective?" I asked. "Why does it matter?" He snapped suddenly, his tone sharper than I'd heard in years. "Are you trying to control who I talk to now?" The accusation hit me like a slap. "Control?" I repeated. "I'm your wife. You've been acting like I don't exist for weeks, and I'm not allowed to ask who you're talking to?" "You wouldn't understand," he said flatly. That line again. "You wouldn't understand." Like I was suddenly beneath him, like I wasn't worth explaining anything to anymore. "I might," I said quietly, "if you actually tried to explain." He shook his head, already looking back at his phone. "It's not something you're ready for." Ready for. I stared at him, something cold settling in my chest. Who was this man? Because the one I married would never talk to me like that. The distance between us wasn't just emotional anymore. It was intentional. And that terrified me. Over the next few days, I started noticing everything. The way he'd leave the room to take calls. The way his voice dropped to a whisper behind closed doors. The way he'd lock the office when he was on sessions. Sessions. That's what he started calling them. "I have a session tonight. I can't talk right now. I'm in a session." "What kind of session?" I asked once. He didn't even look up. "Personal growth." That was it. No explanation. No invitation. Just another door shut in my face. The breaking point came one afternoon when I got home earlier than usual. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Then I heard it. Laughter. Coming from the office. Not the polite, forced kind he'd been giving me lately. Real laughter. Warm. Easy. Alive. I froze. For a second, I just stood there, listening. Because that sound, it didn't belong to me anymore. I knocked once, then opened the door. The laughter stopped instantly. His laptop screen snapped shut. "Oh," he said quickly. "You're home early." "Yeah," I replied slowly, studying his face. "Who were you talking to?" "No one important," he said, too fast. "Just the group. The group. Always the group." I nodded, even though nothing about this felt normal. Later that night, while he was in the shower, I did something I never thought I would do. Something I had always believed I'd never have a reason to do. I tried to check his phone. It was locked. New passcode. My stomach dropped. We had always known each other's passwords. Not because we needed to check, but because we never had anything to hide. When did that change? That question stayed with me. And the next day, I found my answer. He had left his laptop open on the kitchen table. Just for a moment. Just long enough. I wasn't planning to look. That's what I told myself. But my hands moved anyway. The screen was still on his email. And right there, a folder, labeled personal. My heart started pounding. I clicked it. Dozens of emails. All from one name. Alex. I opened the first one. "Lily, our conversation last night was incredible. I've never connected with someone on such a deep emotional level. You're truly awakening." My breath caught. I scrolled. "The way you described your marriage, it's so common. Women often don't realize how much they're sacrificing." Another email. "I'm so proud of you for setting boundaries. You don't owe him physical intimacy. Your body is yours alone." Another. "The more you tell me about her, the more I see patterns of subtle control. Her. Me." I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. This stranger, this Alex, was dissecting my marriage, twisting it, rewriting it. And my husband was letting her. No. Worse. He was feeding it to her. I kept scrolling, and then I saw it. Receipts. Payments. $200, $350, $500, over and over again. My stomach turned. Over $3,000 from our joint account to something called the Authentic Feminine Collective. My hands started shaking. This wasn't just emotional distance. This wasn't just influence. This was manipulation. Calculated. Systematic. And he was right in the middle of it. Not just participating, but believing it. That night, I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Because something inside me had already shifted. The confusion, the fear, the doubt. It was gone, replaced by something colder, clearer, more dangerous. Understanding. This wasn't a rough patch. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was my husband being pulled, slowly, deliberately, away from our marriage. And the worst part? He didn't even see it happening. But I did. And for the first time since this started, I stopped asking how to fix it, and started asking something else entirely. How do I protect myself from it? I didn't confront him right away. Not because I was scared, but because, for the first time since all of this started, I was thinking clearly. The panic was gone. The desperation to fix things was gone. What replaced it was something colder. Control. Over the next few days, I watched him, not like a wife trying to reconnect, but like someone observing a situation she was no longer emotionally inside of. Every night, he locked himself in the office for his sessions. Every morning, he avoided eye contact. Every conversation felt like a performance. Short, distant, rehearsed. And the more I saw, the more I understood. This wasn't just influence. This was isolation. That woman, Alex. She wasn't just giving him advice. She was replacing me, rewriting his reality until I became the villain in a story I didn't even know I was part of. And he believed it. That was the part that hurt the most. Not the money, not the distance, but the fact that he believed a stranger over me. After 9 years, that realization didn't break me. It freed me. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to fight for something he was actively destroying. I was going to walk away from it. Quietly. Completely. Without giving him the chance to twist that too. The next morning, while he was in the shower, I opened my laptop. Lawyer. That was my first step. By the end of the day, I had everything I needed. Legal advice, financial strategy, a plan. And for the first time in weeks, I felt steady. I opened a new bank account, redirected my salary, separated what I could, documented everything. His behavior, the emails, the payments, the language he'd been using. Not out of revenge, but out of protection. Because whatever this had turned into, it wasn't safe for me anymore. 3 days later, I signed a lease. A small apartment downtown. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. No tension, no silence, no stranger sleeping beside me. Just space. The following Friday, while he was at work, I packed. Not everything. Just what mattered. Clothes, personal items, important documents. A few things that actually meant something to me. I left the furniture, the shared things. I wasn't interested in dividing pieces of a life that no longer existed. The last thing I did was sit at the kitchen counter and write. Not a long letter, not emotional, not pleading, just honest. When I was done, I placed it in the center of the table, right where he couldn't miss it. Then I walked out. Didn't look back. Didn't hesitate. Didn't give myself the chance to second guess. For the first time in weeks, I chose myself. The first few days felt surreal, quiet, peaceful in a way that almost didn't feel real. I slept without overthinking. I ate without tension sitting in my chest. I didn't have to wonder who he was texting or why he smiled at his phone but not at me. I reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in months, started going to the gym again. Small things, but they reminded me of who I was before everything started unraveling. And then, the messages came. First, confusion. Where are you? Lily, what is this? Then urgency. Please call me. We need to talk. Then panic. You can't just leave like this. I didn't respond. Not once. Because there was nothing left to say. On the fourth day, he showed up at my office. I had already warned reception. He didn't get past the front desk. By the end of the week, the tone changed. Lily, please. I made a mistake. I don't know what I was thinking. Still, silence from me. Until one day, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. Hello? Is this Lily? The voice was calm, smooth, too smooth. Yes, I said slowly. Who is this? This is Alex. My grip tightened around the phone. I think we should talk. For a second, I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because of how predictable it was. No, I said flatly. We don't. I understand you're upset. No, I cut her off. You don't. There was a pause. Then she continued, softer now. He's struggling. He needs support. And right now, you're... Let me stop you right there, I said, my voice calm but sharp. Stay away from my life. Stay away from my marriage. And if you contact me again, I will make this a legal issue. Silence. Then the line went dead. 2 weeks passed, and slowly, life started to feel like mine again. Until the day he showed up. This time, he looked different. Not the composed, distant version I'd been living with. This was someone else entirely. Tired. Unsteady. Real. Lily, he said softly. I didn't invite him in. We stood there, between two versions of a life that couldn't exist at the same time. I messed up, he said. No defense, no explanation. Just that. I know, I replied. He swallowed. They're not what I thought, he continued. That group. Alex. It's a scam. They target people. They isolate them. Make them doubt everything. I said nothing. Because I already knew. I gave them almost $5,000, he added, his voice breaking slightly. I let that sit in the air. Then finally, what do you want from me? I asked. I want to come home, he said. Home. The word felt strange now, like it belonged to a different life. I've been seeing a real therapist, he continued quickly. Not them. A real one. I understand what happened. I understand how I got pulled in. I'll fix it. I'll pay everything back. I'll do whatever it takes. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in weeks, I saw something familiar. Not the man I married, but the possibility of him. That's good, I said. His expression flickered. That's it? He asked quietly. I stepped back slightly. The thing is, I said, choosing my words carefully, I'm not the same person you left behind either. He went still. I've realized something, I continued. I deserve someone who doesn't need a stranger to tell them I'm worth loving, someone who doesn't rewrite our entire relationship based on a voice on the internet. Tears filled his eyes. I know, he whispered. And I don't know if we can come back from that, I added. Silence. Heavy. Honest. But, I said after a moment, I'll think about it. That was the most I could give. And for once, it was enough. He nodded slowly. Thank you. As he turned to leave, I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But closure. 3 days later, I got an email, forwarded from him, a message from Alex. The collective was shutting down. Personal reasons. Unfounded accusations. The usual excuses. At the bottom, he had written, "She's being reported. I wasn't the only one." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I closed it. That chapter was over. A few days later, he came back one more time. Different again. Simpler. Jeans, t-shirt. No performance. He handed me an envelope. Inside, a check. Full amount. Every dollar he had sent them. I sold some things, he said. I needed to fix this part first. I nodded. Then he handed me something else. A folder. Proof. Messages to other women. Warnings. A support group he had started to help people who went through the same thing. I looked up at him. And for a second, I saw him again. The real version. Or at least, the version he was trying to become. I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. I just wanted you to know. He turned to leave. And before I could stop myself, maybe we can get coffee sometime, I said. He paused, looked back. Hope flickered in his eyes. I'd like that. The door closed behind him, and I stood there, in the quiet, not broken, not confused, not waiting. For the first time in a long time, I was in control of my life, my choices, my future. And whatever happened next, it would be on my terms.